The presence of many of the country's top ministers in a crowd about 100 people at the airport welcoming the ceremony were just one sign of the distress and excitement that Mr. Dial's killing was aroused in Guinea. Many white and black young men at the airport wore white t-shirts on which Mr. Diallo's photograph and name were printed in black. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs had organized a caravan to accompany the body of the cemetery on Wednesday. One ministry official said the trip could take as much longer than normal 5 hours because people living along the route have been encouraged on government radio and television to join in as the motorcade passes their homes. The Diallo case has been received much attention in official media, particularly as a cautionary tale of what can happen to a young black immigrant in New York City, a positive reflection on the unrelenting coverage that the killing industry in the United States. It also has provided an eye-opening account of black political activism in the United States. Several Guineans said accounts of the rallies held in New York City after the showdown have been printed in the newspaper, and most of the people on the street, it seemed, now wave. Nowhere exactly how many bullets, 41 were fired as the officials were killed. The 22-year-old immigrant, "We are not naive. We know there is racism in America," said a man named Antoine waiting for friends outside the airport. He appears to give it last name, and we have been the bodies to our compatriots coming back to Guinea who have been killed there. But now we want to show our support for the struggle of black people in America. Dean Shepard, NewsChannel 4. In Meriden, Mexico, President Clinton said yesterday that Hillary Rodham Clinton would be a terrific senator from New York, and adding to this praise to a growing Democratic clamor for his wife to run for the United States Senate next year. Ralph Penz has a report from our newsroom. Ralph, it's a tradition to make the president and the editor reported that asked if he would encourage her to run. She'd be great if she did it. He cautioned that the idea had not occurred to Mrs. Clinton before. A lot of people started calling and urging her to seek the seat of the Daniel Moynihan was retiring in 2000. For reasons I'm sure you understand, Mr. Clinton said in an apparent allusion to his impeachment trial. She hasn't done anything like any adequate time to talk to these people who think she could do as much as people who think perhaps she shouldn't. I mean, she just hadn't had time to deal with this. With the trial beyond and Mr. Clinton publicly cheerful of disease during a 24-hour working visit to the colonial city in Yucatan seemed happy to prevent speculation about his wife and his future after he leaves the office and been fighting for her so fiercely to keep. She and I both like to continue to be useful in public affairs when we leave office, Mr. Clinton said. Mrs. Clinton was traveling with her husband and did not comment on their travel plans. From a whispering note complained about it, chairman of the Democratic Central Campaign Committee, Senator Robert G. Torselli of New Jersey, and embraced a few New York Democrats by the prospect that Mrs. Clinton might run for the Senate has sprouted in the full speculative bloom. On Sunday, Mrs. Moynihan spoke glowingly about Mrs. Clinton's magnificent, young, bright, able Illinois Arkansas enthusiasm. And yesterday, Representative Charles B. Rangel, a Manhattan Democrat, who was dean of the state's congressional delegation, said he was very excited by Mr. Clinton's remarks. Politically, we have pulled together to be enough that the First Lady can't refuse, he said. He said that Mrs. Clinton has been assured that she would have no opposition in the primary and that she wouldn't have the support of the Democratic Party and organized labor. Further, he said major New York donors have called Mr. Clinton to say that would have backer of her bid of office. Frankly, it was a question of will, said Ms. Rangel was a member of the official delegation here. She's been through so much that she decided it would be too much. Nobody should lean on her, but because it would be a good for our state of our nation. Ms. Rangel did not elaborate on the nature of the assurance that no other Democrat would enter the race. But Judith Hope, the state's property chairwoman, described Mr. Rangel's remarks as a figurative speech and said she was not describing any kind of official formal process, but Mrs. Hope was encouraged that Mrs. Clinton would enter. Trace said last night it was more clear that to me that she is in fact that given this serious consideration, which has been quite something here. Ralph Penz, NewsChannel 4. The first large-scale study of HIV infection among young gay men in New York City has found that the largest numbers have been infected with a virus in the last 2 years, with the levels of young black men exceeding those among whites and Hispanic men, with the levels of infection among the users. Mark Tabar has a report. The result of the young men survey conducted by the New York City Health Department and the New York City Blood Center indicated that 12% of the sample of 15 to 22-year-old men who have sex with men who are infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. Interviews with 545 men who have been sex with men who conducted last year in dance clubs, businesses, and street locations throughout the city. The survey, which is financed by the Federal Centers for Disease Control, And prevention is one of a series of 9 urban areas throughout the country. The surveys began in 1994. New York City participated for the first time last year. The study found that 46% of the respondents reported that they had unprotected anal sex within the last 6 months, and placing them at high risk for acquired and transmitted HIV. Young black men were most heavily affected. 18% of the young African American men and 16% of gay men of mixed race in the survey were HIV positive world. The infection rates were 9% among young Hispanic men and 3% among young white men, according to the Health Department. It's certainly a cause of concern. Dr. Meyer N. Chison, the Assistant Commissioner of Disease Intervention and Research at the city's Health Department, said the findings tells us exactly what kind of high-risk behavior this particular group of men is engaging in, and allows us to focus prevention where prevention is needed the most. Dr. Chison said yesterday that the study did not answer the question of why high-risk behavior was on the rise among young gay men in New York City. She said the study was specially intended to look at the prevalence of HIV infection and current behavior to this particular group of young men instead of changes of behavior over time. The study's results were announced at the recent 6th conference of retroviruses and opportunistic infections in Chicago. Researchers said that racial and infection disparities in HIV infection levels reflect the nationwide trends. The HIV infection rate among the young men were previously has been a sexually transmitted disease with 23%, while it was 10% among those without such a history. 2/3 of those participating in the survey reported that they had also had sex with women. Similar behavior surveys in San Francisco among men who have sex with men indicate that there have been increases in unsafe sexual behavior and retro. Can read from 1994 and 1997 according to a weekly report published last month by the Center for Disease Control. In New York City survey, about a third of the 15 to 18-year-olds have a partner who was older than 30 of the 6 months prior to the participation in the study, while about 45% of 19 and 22-year-olds had partners that are older than 30 years old. It's more likely that older men are HIV infected than younger men, so they might be a higher risk of transmitting HIV. Dr. Chasson said you had seen this pattern in sexually transmitted diseases, particularly in young women who are more likely to have older partners. Public health officials and advocates for people with AIDS have said that this survey has pointed out the need for more prevention efforts in New York City, which has been one of the most hardest hit cities in this country since the early days of the epidemic. Dr. Joshua Lipman, the new executive director of the Gay Men's Health Quest at the nation's largest service agency, said community groups cannot manage without help from government at all levels. There.
So many innovations, so much excitement.
First, Renee Bell named her wire-haired Dashin Ashley, a name Mrs. Bell has liked since childhood. It would seem appropriate because it sounded vaguely British and her dog came from England. Then she gives name to her daughter. I had Ashley dog and I got married and I had Ashley dog and Ashley baby, said Mrs. Bell, a legal assistant in Manhattan, said yesterday. I have no idea why. Now, Ashley, the girl, is 9, and in 1997, her name is the most popular name for girls born in New York City for the 6th year in a row after reckoning the top there really seemingly out of nowhere. When it comes to names, the experts say that the most popular ones are uncannily consistent across the country, from the biggest cities to the smallest rural towns. But if any place is likely to produce surprises, it must be New York City, and demonstrated by the top 10 chart for the 1997. Just released by the New York City Health Department that breaks down of simply names.
Monday on NewsChannel.
The city lags a year behind the national statistics. Because of the large number of immigrants and ethnic groups during the part, New Yorkers tend to be a bit beyond and a bit rebels when it comes to what the experts call domestic trends. So in New York, the top name for Asian boys is Kevin, while the rest of the country, Kevin is more likely to be the name of the fathers than the sons. And David, Daniel, Rebecca, and Rachel still make the top 10 in New York, helped perhaps by a large concentration of Jews, while those names are fading elsewhere. But like the parents of the rest of the country, some experts say New Yorkers are coming out of a cycle of highly individual names and moving in a city of a cycle of more traditional ones, and perhaps still want their children to stand out and only returning the names, but they are returning to perhaps to the Bible and family roots for inspiration rather than TV and mass media. We're looking back in history, so it comes stability to the kids and society, said Edward Caloria, linguist at the North Illinois University in a editor named magazine. Could it be the millennial portion? That would be an interesting speculation, said Cleveland Kent Evans, an associate professor of psychology at Bellevue University outside Omaha, Nebraska. As usual, parents favored more unconventional names for boys than girls, perhaps better because it is still viewed as heirs to a family tradition. That's why we named the boys Junior, Mr. Cowher said, and Miss so on, but that's very rare to see one that says so-and-so and daughter.
From behind.
So Michael and Christopher were the first and second choice for boys in New York City, continuing a trend since 1985. For girls, Ashley has been in the first place since 1992, appeared on that list since 1990, and when it was ranked third, it was, the experts say, part of a waning trend toward giving girls names and ones reserved for boys. Brianna made the list for the first time, ranking about 10th among all girls, but among black girls. Brianna ranked second after Ashley and spelled different as Brianna. It also ranked 8th among black girls. Ms. Evans said it was not surprised that Brianna was so popular among black parents because it would sound like many African names with the 3 syllables long with a sound on a syllable. On the second ones, he was more startled with the rise and popular American name, which remained more marginal, he said, than the rest of the country. Imani, which means faith, was the third most popular name for black girls in 1997. Malik was the 7th most popular name for black boys. People in the northeast part of the country have been much more than Muslim names than African Americans in the rest of the country. And that's the American Americans were not themselves Muslims. This name was the 5th most popular name for black girls and ranked 10th among Hispanic girls. Mr. Evans said it was spread across the country, mostly around the black and Hispanic families, but he said that it believes that connected more to the working class background and the parents and use it to bet to the racial background in his favor that he suggested among people who feel buffeted by destiny. And following the expert could not be sure it was affected the album Destiny by Gloria Estefan, ranked high in the music chart in 1996 year was before the crop of babies being steady was born. Michelle, number one among Asian girls, might have been influenced by champion figure skater Michelle Kwan as well as desired to assimilate, express it, and Kevin now, number one among Asian boys with the first ranked many European countries including Austria, Germany, France, and the Netherlands in the early 90s, where Kevin Costner, Kevin Kline, and Kevin Spacey were exported via American movies, Mr. Evans said. Mr. Galloway has said a saturation theory is naming when the too many children in kindergarten class have the same name. He said just parents start to move on. The main county said for the rise and popularity of old-fashioned names like Sarah number 6 and Emily number 9, which were lost 5 decades ago. Indeed, Sarah ranked number 9 or number 8 in New York City in 1898. A Roman Catholic church in Queens was heavily damaged yesterday by a 3-alarm fire, and then investigators have labeled suspicious. The fire in the Church of St. Anthony of Padua, a plain one-story brick building on 5th Street and 135th Avenue in South Ozone Park, was reported at 1 to 12:30 p.m. as flames seen were shooting right through, said firefighter George Smedley, a fire department spokesman. Several parishioners said the church had undergone extensive renovations several months ago, Mr. Smedley said. The fire was declared under control at 1:51 p.m., but the building's interior was badly damaged, said the altar destroyed, Mr. Smiley said. 2 firefighters who suffered minor injuries were treated at Jamaica Hospital Medical Center and released. In Greenwich, Connecticut, the state is proposing a bill that would intend to reduce pollution in Long Island Sound by regular nitrogen discharges regulating from sewage treatment plants. The Department of Environmental Protection Agency is seeking and asking state legislatures and the General Assembly to require that permits for sewage treatment plants include limits on how much nitrogen the plants can dump into the sound. The current permits do not contain nitrogen limits, said Robert Smith, chief of the Department of Water Management Bureaus. The legislation would allow plants to float pollution levels to sell credits to plants that exceed pollution discharge limits. The proposition would help citizens in towns that did not have the resources to meet the new standards at the treatment plants and reward those that can exceed the standards.
Go USA! After Saturday's thrilling...
In Bedminster, New Jersey, the remains of the 6 colonial settlers discovered during an excavation for a housing subdivision last year were taken to another location where buried on Sunday 2.5 centuries after they were first buried. The remains were Lutheran parishioners of the Mountain Church with logs for 1729 by German settlers at Plugger Mine. Section of Bedminster Township said the Reverend David W. Ross, interim pastor of the Presbyterian Church at Plug Mine. Mr. Cost presided over a burial service in Colonial Cemetery next to his church. The service was attended by archaeologists and local Lutherans, but no known descendants of the settlers were there. The partial remains, about a quarter of which those infants were buried together in a single coffin. The skull of a young woman was discovered in July when the developer told brothers of Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania, was stolen and utilized for Patriot News. A development in a 7610 asset, said Kerr McCarran, a company spokesman. The authorities were contacted in investigation was halted in an archaeological firm of Richard Grubb and associates of Cranberry, New Jersey, were brought to locate any additional remains and identify them.
Other Americans weren't so fortunate.
Trenton, proposed by complaints by inmates' families. The State Corrections Commissioner has asked prison wardens to review cutbacks in weekend visiting hours that were intended to reduce excessive overtime for guards, the official said yesterday. In December, the State Department of Corrections have projected that overtime for the fiscal year ending June 30 would be $20 million higher than the $52 million budget. Commissioner John S. Turbine said the wardens to look for ways to reduce overtime, but after several wardens eliminated daytime visit hours on weekends, inmates' families and complained that the changes made visiting difficult, said Juliet Campbell, as corrections spokesman. Louis Cheeseman, vice president of the Policemen Benevolent Association Local 105, which represents 62 correction officers, blamed the overtime problem and understaffing, which would be said created dangerous conditions for inmates and guards. Officer Cheeseman and guard at Bayside State Prison in Leesburg said the department should have hired 5 or more guards, not reduced visiting hours. Somerville, New Jersey, a Hillsborough firefighter has been arrested on charges of setting 2 fires at the same house, one of which was later called to fight. The authorities in Somerset County yesterday said. CBB Lolo. 21 was among the 50 firefighters who responded to the fire on Friday afternoon at the Straight House under construction, said the Somerset County prosecutor Wayne J. DeForest. Mr. DeLello also accused of setting a fire at the same location on January 29th. About $3,000 in damage was caused on the first floor of the home in the first fire. Mr. Forrest said about 8% of the house in the Heritage Estates development has been completed, authorities said. On Friday night, Mr. DeLello was charged with 2 counts of second-degree aggravated arson, and he was being held in the county jail on $25,000 in bail. In Point Pleasant Beach, about a month after 2 Clement boats sank off the New Jersey coast, killing 8 crew members, the managers of the Point Pleasant Packing Company, a wholesale company, and clammed up and sent to make sure that the last Clemens are not forgotten. The managers of Kathy and Bill Pekika were raising money for making plans for a bronze statue of fishermen to be erected near Manasquan Inlet. The memorials are intended of a place for the residents and the families of the dead to visit, Mr. and Mrs. Becker said. Memorial started out the way to honor the crews of the address, which sank off Long Island and Long Beach Island on January 18th, on the Beth D. Bob said, which sank off January 6th on Manasquan, but it has evolved to encompass all the fishers and climbers from the Jersey Shore who have lost their lives at sea. People have no idea how dangerous this is, and many people died at sea, Mr. Becker said. The memorial will be a lifestyle statue of fishermen peering in out of the past and narrow walk inland towards the sea, the Becker said. In one end will be the bronze bell from the Adriatic, which will be recovered from the wreck by divers. They hope to see the bell from the Beth D. Bowman and the Kibbe South do not. The statue overhand will be carried a bronze lantern, symbolic and lighting the way for home for returning boats. Somerville refrigerator repairman and his girlfriend who had been missing for 2 weeks were found dead of asphyxiation on Sunday after what appeared to be an accident in Somerville rental garage, authorities said yesterday. Kevin J. Coffey of 42 and Grenham, Gloveland, both of Georgeville, Pennsylvania, were found inside Mr. Cuss. These 4 men parked in the garage, which was the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office said in a statement yesterday. The police said they believe that a couple died accidentally while sleeping in the garage, which was owned by Alfonso's Pizzeria. Ms. Coffey and Mrs. Loveland were last seen alive on January 30th, said Corporal James Nels, the Pennsylvania State Police at Frackville. Mr. Coffey had completed refrigerator and service jobs, and that Somerville Region that day said Somerville Police said that he was allowed to use a garage connected to the pizzeria because he had done refrigeration work for the business in the past. One in a couple of them returned home a few days later. Family members were reported missing, Corporal Nels said. The prosecutor's office said a drug employee discovered a van and the bodies at 11 a.m. on Sunday. Pending an autopsy, assistant medical examiner Dr. General R. Shackett said a couple died of carbon monoxide asphyxiation.
Sets us up on Thursday with temperatures into the mid-40s, and then look at
President Clinton meeting with officials in Mexico said Mexico should not be penalized for the performance in the fight against illicit drugs. His remarks left a little doubt that he would tell the Congress that Mexico was a reliable partner in the effort. The bad shape emerged as the peace deal that the 2 sides will be compelled to accept, of which Russia playing a key role in an effort to persuade the Serbs to let the NATO lead peacekeepers into their territory. Iraq President attacked a base in Turkey, from which American and British jets patrolled over Iraq. Iraq's second-ranking leader told Turkish officials that this country had complied at least partly the United Nations disarmament resolutions. President Jacques Chirac of France said he hoped to make headway with President Clinton this week on French proposal to lift the oil embargo against Iraq to resume weapons inspections. General Osagan Abasio, who became Nigeria's first military leader and give up the power, voluntary was nominated for the President Biden, the country's leading political party. China released a journalist in prison for writing about Chinese politics in Hong Kong publications. The move came 2 weeks before a planned visit by Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. British officials could express confidence that the Iranian government was committed to its reputation on a 10-year-old death sentence against Salman Rushdie, despite calls from Iran over the weekend to the religious etiquette of fatwa to be carried out. A ruling by Italian court that the women wearing jeans cannot be raised because it's an uproar. Senator Trent Lott, with the majority leader, held a town meeting in Warren, Michigan, as part of a new Republican strategy to reshape the party's image and agenda against the impeachment trial. After that, and to drum up support for the tax cut, the most Republican crowd, about 500, responded fairly warmly, but their emphasis was tempered by concern that tax cuts would be effective prospects for reducing the national debt. Republican moderates are found to play a more forceful role in the Congress, demanding that the party take program stands on abortion, education, and taxes and environment and other issues. An American Bar Association panel led by former Attorney General Edwin Meese III warned lawmakers against the misguided, unnecessary, and harmful tendency of turning more offenses into federal crimes. A large avalanche in an area adjacent to Matt Baker Ski area in North Cascade Mountains of Washington State killed a snowboarder on Sunday in West Wall. A secure who was missing and presumed dead, officials said.
Because the hockey results are about to appear on your screen.
Scientists say they have completed the first major step in distributing the sacred influenza virus in 1918, which killed up to 40 million people. Some questions were answered about the virus's origins. The most fundamental one remains: what made it so lethal? A federal court will begin hearing a class action lawsuit filed by the family of 3 San Francisco Chinese American students are in its city's school desegregation efforts. Hundreds of Vietnamese immigrants blocked the entrance of a video store in Westminster, California, where the owner, also a Vietnamese immigrant, wanted to rehang a poster of Ho Chi Minh.
That there was no hangover or emotional letdown after that.
New evidence is leading the scientists to believe the Earth's present warm period is not nearing any end and may last another 20,000 years. A worldwide debate has begun over Iceland's decision to market to researchers a database of the health records, genealogical backgrounds, and the DNA profiles of the people. John Dewey Lickman, the chief domestic policy advisor to President Richard Nixon, who later went to prison and enrolled for the Watergate scandals, died at the age of 73. A federal judge contempt citation prompted most American Airlines pilots to return to work, easing delays and letting the airline make its big strides toward returning to normal. Americans had expected that nearly all flights would operate today. Credit Suisse said it would be acquiring Warburg Pincus Asset Management for $400 to $650 million, which would let the Swiss bank's assets management arm expand United States sales. Alright, on to the way now. Janice up. Take away, Janice. Okay, thank you, Chuck and Sue. Right now, our current conditions at 6 p.m. reports it's 46 degrees at temperature in LaGuardia, it's 40 at JFK, 45 in Newark, 46 in Fairfield, 47 in Teterboro, 41 in White Plains, 50 up in Peekskill, 39 in Bridgeport, 43 out in New Haven, and 41 out in Islip on Long Island. There.
The man who pulled the trigger at a gas station, killing a teen. It began over.
Let's take a look at our national forecast. This goes like this. It's yesterday morning. The temperature fell to a record low of 25 degrees.
Stay tuned for this right here after NewsChannel 5.
At Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as clear skies and night winds promote unusually chilly conditions over the southeast. Another cool start occurred across the region today, but the sunshine caused temperatures to rapidly rebound into the 60s and lower 70s by mid-afternoon sunshine. Covered the middle United States and northeast with slightly above normal temperatures expected. Areas of snow accompanied lower pressure crossing the upper middle west today, as several inches of snow fell from northern Minnesota to the northern peninsula of Michigan, where AM moistening and a transit over Lake Superior and had snowfall accumulations. Showers occurred farther south as a cold front intended to lower it slipped some Ohio mid-air position over the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. Isolated thunderstorms erupted later this afternoon. Heavy rain battered much of the northern California today as steady stream of moist air arrived from the Pacific Ocean as the damp air lifted and cooled in the interior mountains. Very heavy snow blanketing the Sierras and about 6,000 feet where total snowfall may exceed about 40 inches by tomorrow morning. Farther north, scattered showers and mountain snow will affect western Washington and Oregon. Wet weather will spread into the interior west later today, reaching the western Montana and Wyoming by late in the afternoon. Alright, let's take a look at our forecast. It goes like this. For tonight, clear the podcast skies, not as chilling in recent nights, lows about between the middle 30s. For tomorrow, increased clouds, rain development in the afternoon, still mild for the season, highs 40s and 50s. Thursday and Friday, rain will develop on Thursday as low pressure develops along the coast and brief respite from precipitation will occur Friday. Clouds will increase later Friday day, and on Saturday and Sunday, a major storm system will bring rain or snow and high winds on Saturday. Sunday will be windy and chill with decreasing cloudiness. Sunrise tomorrow morning about 6:48 a.m. and moon set 6:09 p.m. Sunrise tomorrow morning about 7:42 a.m. New moon February 16th, first quarter moon February 22nd. Full moon March 2nd, 1:38 a.m. and last quarter moon March 10th. Saturn sets date 10:32 p.m. tonight. Jupiter sets date 15 p.m. tonight. Mars rises 11:10 p.m. tonight, and Venus rises. Venus sets at 7:40 p.m. Winds variable at 10 knots in the morning, becoming 7 at 10 knots in the afternoon. Continuing the night. Visibility 3 miles more, and wave heights 1 foot in the sound, 2 feet in the ocean. And that is gonna be it. And New York at West Cheshire Reservoir levels yesterday 74.4%. Estimated normal 82.6. Consumption Thursday 1.143 billion gallons, and that's gonna be for the weather. I'm Janice up. Here now, Len Berman with his sports shorts. Take away, Mr. Berman. Alright, thank you very much. Janice, tonight the Knickerbockers will be at Madison Square Garden taking on the Toronto Raptors, while the New Jersey Nets will be out of Maryland taking on the Detroit Pistons. Tampa, Florida. Dirk Jeter emerged from his 4-hour arbitration hearing today with his grin attack, a testament to his confidence, as others have been embittered by the arbitration process after listening to their employers minimize or even disintegrate their contributions. As respect to the Mets and Ray Ordonez avoided arbitration where they agreed to a 1-year, $1.65 million deal for the Gold Glove shortstop that was formally announced was said today and yesterday. The death of Vinny Testaverde Farver has been delayed negotiations to extend the quarterback's contract and make him a Jet for the remainder of his career. Both sides then expected the deal to be completed as early as today, but Testaverde Farver, Al, 66 years old, died of heart failure after attending a family wedding in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Died on Sunday. Never will ever happen this week here then. Testaverde's agent, Mike Azarelli, said yesterday. Tiger Woods loves match play. He loves challenges, so he should play love next week. He should love. Woods is scheduled to face Nick Faldo with a intriguing match that will be highlighted in the opening round of the Anderson Consultant World Match Play Championship, which begins on February 24th at La Costa Resort and Spa in Carlsbad, California. The top 64 players will do this official world ranking fight yesterday qualified for this event, the first of the new World Golf Championship Series. Middle linebacker Corey Woodbury, at a restricted free agent, is expected to remain with the Giants by signing a 4-year contract for about $10 million. Even today, it'll be the first transaction of free agency period for the Giants, will also strapped into its $57.3 million salary cap that there's two sub-payroll maneuver to make some room for Woodbury's contract. Greg Vaughn can keep his goatee. The Cincinnati Reds have dropped one of the most distinctive and the most widely questioned policies yesterday that allow players to have facial hair. The former Reds general manager, Bob Osman, knocked the man in 1967 incident. His team maintained a clean-shaven look during the decade of long hair. It has become so ingrained in the club history that only Mark Sean had any offer to reverse it. Second baseman Ray Durham avoided a salary arbitration hearing yesterday and agreed to a $20 million 4-year contract with the Chicago White Sox. And the deadline for Olympic bidders have to tell of rule-breaking behavior by International Olympic Committee members that the cities that tried to woo them passed yesterday with no new scandals. One Winter City, Atlanta, failed to make the deadline, and bid officials said they did not find any wrongdoing during the interview. In the wake of a Salt Lake City bribery scandal, the ROC sent letters to all cities that bid for the games from 1996 onward asking for evidence of ethical misconduct by IOC members. The committee had said yesterday that with no word on how many cities replied. And that is going to be it for News Channel 4 at 6 o'clock on this February the 16th, 1999. I'm Chuck Scarborough alongside Sue Simmons and Len Berman and Jess Upson. Have a good evening. Coming next on Channel 4 will be the NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. We'll be back for News Channel 4 at 11. Have a good evening. See you at 11.
Exercise your freedom of choice.